Thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts football podcast, where we discuss the latest news, rumors, and games of the NFL and college football. As always, I'm your host, Jeremiah.
And I'm Anthony.
And we have a lot to talk about today. Man, oh man, like literally, Anthony, when I got done with the show yesterday, the news of Adrian Peterson becoming a free agent broke yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
It literally like 20 minutes after when I got done, and I'm looking at the two TV screens that we have here in the studio, and I saw that it was breaking news that the Vikings won't pick up their option for 2017. I was like, wow, I wish this would have happened like an hour ago so I can talk about it. But you know what, though? It's probably better because I get to talk about it with you, Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever we get to talk about stuff, we can have a back and forth, and it becomes more entertaining. So,
Sure. Yeah. So Adrian Peterson's gone, right?
Yeah, and he was set to make $18 million.
That's a lot.
And the Vikings are not picking up the 2017 option, so he becomes a free agent when the new league year starts on March 9th, which is next week.
Mm-hmm.
And he had his worst season.
Yes.
He's about to be 32 years old.
Yes.
So he is going to go to a team. He's going to draw a lot of interest because of his name alone. And I did say that yesterday on the fantasy football show, I think he could end up in either with the New York Giants and possibly the Oakland Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that he had Tampa Bay. He had, what was the other team he had on his wish list? Oh, Houston Texans.
Right.
But I think he wants to be like the lead guy. I think he wants to be the guy, and that's why I don't think Tampa Bay and Houston are right fits, because they got Lamar Miller in Houston who got signed to be the guy.
Sure.
And then you got Doug Martin. I know he's suspended for 4 games in Tampa Bay, but when he's come back, he's going to want to be the lead guy. So I think he needs to go to a place where he's going to be a starter. The Packers is one as well.
Yeah, and the Texans thing makes sense. He's from Texas, right? So he's not going to go to Dallas, right? He's not going to be the backup behind Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas. So going to Houston's the next best thing. But, yeah, those things aren't going to happen probably because, Adrian Peterson's the best running back I've ever seen, right? Even the whole thing, like we'll get into the other running back that basically got cut yesterday, but even at 31, going to be 32 years old, I still, and this is probably just like the fan in me, right? This is me just probably like hoping more than anything else, like just assuming that like once he gets healthy, he's going to be back and he's going to be basically, not the guy from 2012, fine, but like, he had 1,000 yards last year or 2 years ago, right? Like he still did really well last year. He led the league in rushing 2 years ago, and I understand that's when he was 30, but I still find it hard to believe that he can't get 1,000 yards next year, even at the age of 32 years old, which is more or less impossible, right? Like it's kind of one of those things of you really don't have any good barometer of like somebody over 30 years old doing good things. You have, people like Marcus Allen in the past, but the reason he was doing so good because basically Al Davis hated him and didn't play him in Oakland, but, even someone like Emmitt Smith, right? Emmitt Smith was good later on in his career, but they're like anomalies to the rule, right? You have certain situations where you can be good at a later age. I think Adrian Peterson still can be. I wouldn't bet on it as much as, it's just a wish at this point because I want him to be great. I want him to basically have like one more great season in him, whether that's for, the Giants, whether that's for the Packers, whether that's for the Raiders, whoever that's for, like basically make it onto a team that once you put him on there, he's the kind of like finishing, he's the final piece of the whole thing, right? Because we put him in the Giants. You got Eli, who say what you will about Eli. He's got 2 rings, and he did pretty well last year. You got Odell Beckham. You put him over in Oakland. That team has the second best offensive line behind Dallas. So I want him, just as the fan in me, like I just want him to have like one last run, and I think he still can do that. Not lead the league in rushing, but still get 1,000 yards.
Growing up, because me and you, we grew up watching the game, and Adrian Peterson entered the league. At least when
2007.
I was in when we were both in high school, right?
Right.
So we grew up watching Adrian Peterson. He literally made. He was one of the main guys in the NFL that kind of made the NFL kind of cool a little bit in that time. And, back in his days at Oklahoma, he was probably one of the best running backs
His freshman year at Oklahoma is still my favorite. Like, his freshman year when he was just insanely good.
His career in Oklahoma was just insane. Like, at the time, he was the best college running back I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And then that kind of, then Leonard Fournette kind of came in 10 years later. But getting back to Adrian Peterson here, I do think the Green Bay Packers is a great team for him. It's a great fit. The Giants, I do think that's a great fit. The Raiders, I bring the Raiders up because, they do got the second best O-line in the league. And they got really good offense there, I think. And I do think that Latavius Murray is going to sign elsewhere. And they got really good depth at that running back position. They got
right.
Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington, who are really good complementary backs.
But none of them, if Peterson is anywhere close to what he was, none of them are going to compete with him.
No, they're not going to compete with him.
At least Eddie Lacy might compete with him a little bit in Green Bay. And if you go to the Giants, we talked about Perkins, like he could at least do some stuff to maybe compete with him a little bit. But the other problem is, either situation you go right. If you go to Green Bay, okay, now you just literally went to the enemy team. Ask Brett Favre how that goes in reverse. If you go to the Giants, you got to worry about the Packers. You got to worry about the Cowboys, and you even kind of got to worry about Washington a little bit. If you go over to Oakland, you got to worry about Denver, and that's it. Maybe Kansas City's going to do a little bit better, but that all kind of depends on if they get another running back to kind of like shore up everything else like that. If Alex Smith is still on the team, or if he, if they try and add a Tony Romo kind of thing like that.
He'll be on the team no matter what, I believe.
Even if you get Tony Romo, I don't know why I say Tony Romo. They're probably not going to get Tony Romo, but wherever you go, he's going to have some good competition, as far as the running back goes, at least once he first gets there. And then if he can kind of prove himself to be like, oh, okay, cool, that's Adrian Peterson. Okay, yeah, cool. All you guys, you're backups.
Like, step back. I think something that we have to also talk about is I think it's possible for Adrian Peterson to land back with the Vikings, honestly.
Sure.
I think there's a chance for that to happen. They could bring him back on a cheaper deal. There's no way. The reason why they did this is because there's no way they're going to bring him back at $18 million.
No. That's the theme, basically, of this whole thing.
And they can bring Adrian Peterson back probably like on a 5-year deal. That's 1 year, maybe. But I do think that the Vikings are going to address the running back position in the draft. And I do think this is the perfect draft, the strongest draft of running backs that I've seen in a while. And I do think the Vikings will get a very good, suitable candidate to fill that running back spot because I don't think they're going to get Leonard Fournette. They're not going to get Dalvin Cook. They don't have a first-round pick, I don't think, this year. So they're not going to get any of those guys.
Right.
But there is a chance they can possibly get Christian McCaffrey, maybe in the second round, Dante Foreman in the second round. There's going to be a lot of good running backs in the second round. You got Jamaal Williams coming out of BYU. So there's going to be a lot of strong running backs in the second round. If the Vikings had a first-round pick, they would have had a legitimate shot at getting Dalvin Cook, unless they can trade up in the draft.
Sure. And that's the thing. They would probably look more offense, right, because that defense is really good. Maybe they want to add a couple pieces to, like, shore it up and give a little bit of depth to it. But with them, they don't have that good of a wide receiver core. They probably go after some offensive players. At that point, maybe they go after an offensive lineman just to make sure that Sam Bradford doesn't basically get destroyed like poor Bridgewater did. But I hope Peterson does well. I think he probably leaves the Vikings because at this point I think he just kind of wants to like reset. That's kind of the theme, by the way, of this whole thing. It's just kind of either A, you make too much money, or B, we just need to kind of like push the reset button. For Peterson, it was a little bit of both. You made $18 million. As great as you were, you're not that dude anymore. We're going to let you go. If you want to come back cheap, maybe, but probably just kind of clean break and we're kind of, move forward. You go to another team, see if you can, have another great season or two, and then after that we'll retire your jersey in like 5 years.
Yeah, and there's something. Okay, well, there was a team that was from the home state of AP,
right?
And that is not the Houston Texans. That was Cowboys.
Yep.
And, of course, Jerry Jones, he's going to have interest, and I just don't think it's going – that would not work. To me, that's a disaster waiting to happen. I just think, why would Jerry Jones want to go out and spend money on an aging running back that's not even going to start even though you already have a top 3 running back in the league, and I get that you want to kind of want depth behind Ezekiel Elliott, but you already have good depth already behind him. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I understood it a couple of years ago when you didn't have Ezekiel Elliott and you were trying to find a good running back to replace him. But now that you got Ezekiel Elliott, he's what, top 2?
Top 3. I think he's top 3. I'm not ready to put him in the top 2 yet.
But he's one of the best running backs in the game, and you're not going to try and like dilute that by putting Peterson back there because that's not fair to either person. But we have that situation over there. He's, going to go to, Denver's one of the options. Denver's not a bad thing either, but if you do that. Now, what if you basically take Dallas and you go move it west, and you basically say, like, okay, Tony Romo, you go play quarterback for us. Adrian Peterson, you go play running back for us. Now, all of a sudden, that team that did make the playoffs last year, now you got a good shot of making a deep run because that defense of Von Miller is still insane, and that's a pretty good team. Yeah,
and they got pretty good depth at running back, too. They got Devontae Booker, who took over the starting spot. There's C.J. Anderson got hurt. But, yeah, I do think the team that will land Adrian Peterson is going to be the New York Giants because it's the biggest market in the country. And, he's playing behind a Super Bowl winning quarterback.
Right.
And I do think that would be a good option. I think the Raiders is a good option, but I don't think that one's going to happen for a lot of reasons. I just don't think it will make sense for Oakland to get an aging running back when you have a young team like that. So I do think they will address the running back position in the draft. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, and he's going to be one of the big names that will be on the market. And he's not the only big-name running back that's going to be on the market, though, Anthony.
Nope.
Kansas City. Kansas City released Jamaal Charles. They released him yesterday. And Jamaal Charles, he's been one of the great running backs, but, like AP, he's had injuries throughout his career.
Right.
Charles is turning 30 years old. He's been he's honestly the all-time leader in the Chiefs franchise. Like, he's the all-time leader in rushing yards. He even
yards
has
per carry, single game rushing yards. Like, he's been really good for him. If it wasn't for like ACL injuries he's had, he could have been really good. Like, he's 30 years old, and for everybody not named Adrian Peterson, 30 years old is basically that, kind of mark of just like, okay, cool, now you're done. Now whatever you were is good. That's going to go away, for most people. But the problem was for him, it just became a situation where they couldn't trust him. He's getting older, money, kind of all the things kind of like went together. You have something like Spencer Ware on the team who, had 960 or 921 yards last year. So you did a really good job for them. So now you got the situation where you got a backup who's 25, getting 4.3 yards a carry. You have a situation where Jamaal Charles, while he was basically your entire offense a few years ago, he's not that guy anymore, and you got to kind of move on. Like, that's the business of the NFL. Like, I saw someone point this out. Like, we'll talk about, like, when people sign the fat contracts in the NFL, right? So Antonio Brown yesterday basically signed for the highest contract ever from an NFL wide receiver, right? Which is great for him and good for the Steelers because now they basically have the running back, quarterback, and wide receiver locked up because they basically decided to put Le'Veon Bell's franchise tag. So that's great. The team that literally just won the Super Bowl and won 2 out of the last 3 Super Bowls, the Patriots, swear to God, name me a player on that team that's overpaid.
Not one.
Like, even Brady and Gronk aren't overpaid. Maybe you can say Gronk is, like, competently paid because he gets hurt a lot and he gets a decent amount of money. Maybe you can say he's, like, sort of worth it just because, while he gets paid not a lot, he does get injured a lot. So it's kind of a balancing act with that. But Brady's contract keeps getting slashed because his wife makes more than he does. You get people like Chris Hogan, Danny Amendola, and, Edelman who get all of this production and they're cheap. Now you have the situation where Jamie Collins gets traded. Chandler Jones got traded before the season, and he's making all the money now because he's getting franchise tagged by the Cardinals. They don't overpay for the people, which allows them to have a bunch of good players on the roster, like they had when they had someone else we're going to get into later on, Darrelle Revis. Once he wanted to get paid, they were like, yeah, no, we're not doing that, and they let him go to the Jets. And for Jamaal Charles, it's just a situation where he'll be fine. Like, he'll probably go to another team. He might not be the starter for a team because, again, 30-year-old running back. But, I mean, it's not like, I don't think he's all the way done. It's just the thing of you got to hope he gets, kind of healthy because he's played 8 total games over the last 2 years. At least with Adrian Peterson, last year was really bad, but the year before that he led the league in rushing. With him, I mean, he might be done. I think he gets signed by somebody. I just don't know if he ends the season with that team.
And that's the thing I was going to say. I do think he will sign with the team. I just don't think he would be with that squad when the 2017 season starts.
Right.
I think he's more done than what Adrian Peterson is. I do think Adrian Peterson still has some left in the tank. Jamaal Charles, he's had multiple ACL injuries. He even got put on the injury reserve last year due to knee soreness. But ever since he had his career high, 1509 in 2012, every year it has gone down. He did finish third overall in rushing. He had 1281. And then he barely kind of eclipsed the 1,000 mark in 2014 with 1033. Then 2015 when he got hurt in at 364. And then this year was probably the lowest he's ever had at 40 yards for an entire year. So I do think the emergence of Spencer Ware did kind of helped Chiefs make this decision. Remember, Spencer Ware is only 25. He did gain 921 yards and did average 4.3 yards a carry. So I do think I'm not surprised by this, and I do think that the Chiefs needed to move on from Charles, but I think Jamaal Charles might be done because of the injuries. I do think he's going to get signed by a team, but I don't think he will make it. I don't think he will be on the team at the beginning of the 2017 season. So that's what I think of Jamaal Charles.
Yeah, it just kind of sucks because I did like Jamaal Charles, liked watching him. It's just one of the things the NFL's hard, man. Like, I was joking with Ben about this in the sports show. Like, no one really likes turning 30, right? It's kind of one of those things just like, oh, my 20s are done, and you get sad, right? But for the NFL, man, it's one of those things just like you get, like, unless you're a quarterback, right? Unless you're a quarterback or a punter or someone like that, maybe even an offensive lineman, but even that, you kind of start getting towards the line. Like, unless you're basically a quarterback, kicker, punter, once you turn 30, you're just like, oh, man, like, you got to basically, like, start watching your money, right? You got to kind of...
You got to start watching your money. You got to start watching your diets,
Yeah,
take Tom Brady, for example. His diet is insane.
Yeah, like, it's just kind of one of those things of, like, you start freaking out a lot. Like, you kind of understand that, like, your career is starting to tail away. Like, it's not the same as it used to be. Like you said, you got to start watching what you eat. I mean, even Darrelle Revis, he's 31 right now, right? Like, we basically saw last year, it was like, oh, cool, so you're not Darrelle Revis anymore. That stinks. You know what I mean? But, I mean, so basically what we assume is that Adrian Peterson will probably be on another team. And that's because, honestly, probably most teams are doing what we're doing, where it's just like, oh, yeah, it's Adrian Peterson. We love him. We can fix him, to where Jamaal Charles is just like,
no, you're done.
They're like, I mean,
but, man, Jamaal Charles could have had a much better career if he did not get those ACL injuries in 2011, 2015. Man,
right.
He missed 14 games in 2011 and 24 and 25 in 16 combined. So 2015 and 2016, he missed 24 games. So.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, it's an ACL injury for a position where you got to cut. Like, he's probably done, man. Like, and it stinks.
It does. And Jamaal Charles, and a few people would know how great he will be with the Chiefs. I do think he would. I think he would go down as one of the all-time underrated, probably underachieved running backs at the same time because of injuries. Mm-hmm. Well, Anthony did talk about Darrelle Revis turning 31, and we're actually going to talk about him after the break when we get back to the Going to Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the Going to Meet Concepts Football Podcast. And there was a lot of big names on the market, beginning yesterday, and another big name, but that didn't really have a really good year was Darrelle Revis. And we all know the illegal thing that Darrelle Revis is involved in right now. He's dealing with a lot of legal issues, especially with his, his case in Pennsylvania.
Right.
But, the Jets say that releasing Darrelle Revis is strictly a football move, which, to a point it is. I think it is because he was probably one of the worst players on that team.
Right.
He was one of the worst players on that team, and then there was an article that I read, and it said that Darrelle Revis is probably one of the best draft picks in Jets history, and ended up being the worst free agent signing. Like that, if you think about it, it is true. And Revis was due to make at least $15.3 million.
Yeah,
he was going to get paid a lot of money. So Darrelle Revis is no longer with the Jets. He's going through a lot of legal issues, and with all that right now going on for him, do you think a team will take a chance? Because remember, I do think he's only 31 years old, so I still think he has a chance to transition to safety, but he couldn't cover on the open field at all.
Sure. Well, that's the thing, though, because you talked about the safety thing. It's the whole Charles Woodson thing, right? Because he basically, later on in his career decided to go from cornerback to safety. And when I say decided, it was one of those things where just okay, well, you can't do this like you could anymore, but if you still want to play in the NFL, you can play this position and still succeed. Now, there's, the chance of, I guess, Darrelle Revis coming back to the Jets, but that relies on one thing happening, which is a pay cut, which I don't know if you've ever followed Darrelle Revis' career. That's not what he does. He basically says, I want my money, I want all of my money, and if you won't give me my money, I'll find someone else who will. He was with the Patriots when they won the Super Bowl. He was a pretty big piece of that Super Bowl. And then after that said, okay, I want to get paid, and the Patriots were like, yeah, we're not doing that. And he said, okay, fine, I'll play for the Jets. Then he's like, okay, have fun, go over there, see how that goes for you, and we'll look how that went for him. Patriots basically got his last good year. And for him, it's kind of like a three-pronged thing, right? He's supposed to make a bunch of money, he's getting older, and he's got the legal problems, right? Now, maybe the legal problems get sorted out over the next month or two. Maybe he all of a sudden gets a little bit better when he goes to safety, but the age thing is still a thing. Now, the age thing kind of gets helped out when you're a safety because all of a sudden your jobs aren't as big because you don't have to do a one-on-one kind of defense running down people like Julio Jones or Antonio Brown. That's a very hard thing to do. If you're a safety, it's a lot easier to do. So I think he can do that, and basically he will look for teams that can help him out, right? He'll kind of go to teams that he knows, right? So you kind of look at okay, so who are the teams that he's played for? Well, he played for the Jets, he played for the Buccaneers, he played for the Patriots. He's not going back to the Patriots. Maybe he goes back to Tampa Bay, but then you start looking at people that were the offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators when he was there, right? You kind of go with familiarity. We're seeing that right now over in Washington with Kirk Cousins, how he's basically trying to get out of there to go to San Francisco to play for his old offensive coordinator that he had over in Washington. So he basically, for Revis, I don't think he's done by any stretch, right? I think he's just kind of, adapting. He's going to start adapting for his new kind of spot, whether that's, back with the Jets or wherever else. I don't think he's done. I just think he basically is going to look for a new, team that will – because the thing is, if you go over the defensive coordinators in this league, you don't think any of them have the ego enough to where they think, I can make him good again. I can make Darrelle Revis the best safety in the game. They have egos like anything else. They're like, he was great, now he stinks. I can bring him back. They're totally going to do it. They're totally going to think that they can basically make him what he was in 2009, but as a safety, right? Because they've seen him. They saw him basically burn him every single week. And I think the chance to basically make him better, that's going to be enticing for a lot of people.
Yeah, you got defensive coordinators, sporting the red hats that say, make Darrelle Revis great again.
Exactly. So. They're going to try. Exactly. They're going to try.
That's what they're going to do.
That's what they're going to try and do.
All right, well, I got a stat here. And among all the players that were targeted at least 75 times, per NFL research, Revis allowed a 108 passer rating, which was the highest in the league.
That's no good.
That tells you pretty much that Revis Island was fully booked.
That's it. That's the other thing. He has to hate Revis Island. No, like he has to, because that was one thing where it's like, oh, it's Revis Island and no one can get on the island. No, now it's Hawaii. Now everybody goes there, right? It's not the same thing.
Exactly. It's like a vacation spot now.
Right.
For a lot of... Oh, wow. I'm so glad you dropped that Hawaii reference.
I mean, that's basically what it is now.
It is. It's basically Hawaii. It's a destination. Yeah, where you get to pad up your stats, basically.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, with Darrelle Revis pretty much being arraigned for 5 criminal charges, stemming from his alleged involvement in a physical altercation earlier in February, I do think he will sign with the team. And Anthony's taking a picture or Snapchatting.
No, that's not what I'm doing.
Okay, well, I do think Darrelle Revis will sign with the team, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I think he's, with all the legal things, they all pan out and all that. I think a lot of teams are going to wait for the legal process to pretty much get done, or at least wait for it to process even more.
I think once they get more information.
Yeah, once I have more information, that's what I'm trying to say.
Not like all the way settled or anything else like that, but I think if people start to kind of like say different things, like if the story starts to change, something like that, and the heat dies down from it, that's when I think teams will actually start doing things, right? I think that's when you'll kind of see people a little more eager to sign Revis, because if it starts to get bad, then they're just going to kind of do a thing where
then it falls back on the team and all that. Then it's going to be a PR issue. So I do think once more information comes out, I think teams are going to generate. They're going to be interested in signing Revis because remember, he is a big name. I do think he's still young enough to transition to safety.
Right.
But I don't think it's going to happen until probably the summer, probably like July before training camp starts, maybe June. So I do think Revis is going to have to wait a long time to get signed. And speaking of the safety position, Eric Berry became the highest paid safety yesterday. He agreed to a new deal with Kansas City worth $78 million over 6 years with $40 million in guaranteed money. So Eric Berry is the highest paid safety, and there was a thing going on with the Chiefs that they were either going to tag Eric Berry or Dontari Poe. Okay, so they signed Eric Berry to a long-term deal. They're not going to franchise tag Dontari Poe, and Dontari Poe is 26, so he is one of the few interior linemen, defensive linemen that can play all 3 downs. But getting back to Eric Berry, though, he's only 28. He's got a lot left in the tank from him. I mean, remember, he was a guy that came back from cancer a couple years ago. An incredible year.
Super good story.
He had a season in which he was pretty much a defensive player of the year candidate. So I think he deserved that money. He deserved to be the highest paid safety in the league because he plays like it. He plays like the best safety in the league, and that's what he is. Yeah,
no, he basically did the thing where you bet on yourself, right? Because he came back after cancer, signed a franchise tag the year before that, basically wanted to prove that he could come back from it, right? And he basically did. And now he gets the contract, right? And even the thing with the NFL is like, whatever. Like, he signed the 6-year deal for, a whole lot of money, but it's only $40 million of guaranteed money. So, but even that's a whole lot of money still. And he's basically someone that solidifies that defense because you needed him on that defense. You needed him with Poe. You needed him with everybody else on that defense. Now that you have that situation, now you got him locked up. Now you can kind of worry about other stuff like that. You said Poe was someone they might franchise tag. Now they're saying they're not going to franchise tag him. You let Jamaal Charles go. The kind of team is they're figuring out what they are right now because you still got Alex Smith. You got the whole situation now with Eric Berry. It's a really, really, really good story. I think it's something that, because it's not even like he's too old, right? He's 28 years old. Like, he's still going to be good for the next 2 or 3 years. And what we just talked about with Darrelle Revis, going to safety, you play a little bit longer. We saw Charles Woodson be really good into his mid-30s. So this contract, while it's a decently long contract of 6 years, he can still be of value with that contract later on in his career because usually what happens is after about year 3 or 4, they start restructuring the deal a little bit to be a little bit, more cap-friendly kind of thing like that. So this is really good for him because he gets his money probably up front, and the Chiefs get something to where they can, have stability at that position going forward.
Not only that, they have a guy they can continue to build around. They can have a guy continue to build around, and I do think it gives a chance for Eric Berry to play with the Chiefs his entire career.
We've also seen how valuable a safety like his caliber can be, like with Seattle, right? Because with Seattle, once Earl Thomas went down, then all of a sudden it all went haywire, right? And all that Legion of Boom defense is really good. It's also something where you didn't realize just how important he was. You knew Earl Thomas was good, but once he went down, like, it all started to kind of go downhill from him. So I think having him there is kind of the, I don't know what you call it, floor general. I don't know what you want to call it, because we saw how important something like Ed Reed or Polamalu was for those defense. Like, safety matters a lot because they're kind of the ones that are kind of barking out what to do. Them in, like, the linebacker spot, they're the ones that basically tell the defenses what to do in certain situations. So now that he's there, and obviously, like you said, along with Earl Thomas, he's one of the best safeties in the NFL. This gives them the ability to keep their basically coach on the field, right? So that part helps out a lot as well.
Yeah, and remember, the Chiefs actually failed to reach a long-term agreement with Eric Berry last July. Mm-hmm. So this is really good for the Chiefs organization. And like I said, it gives a guy to build around. And like you said with Earl Thomas, when he went down,
mm-hmm.
that defense wasn't the same.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because they're getting a little older. Maybe it's impact of the not having that presence in the middle. But I'm telling you right now, safety is there's not many good safeties available in the league. And this is actually a pretty deep safety draft with DBs and all that. It's a pretty deep draft for defensive backs this year. But there's not really a whole lot of great safeties available. You know, when you think about safeties in the league, you know, of course you're going to put Earl Thomas there. You got to put Eric Berry. You can put Tyrann Mathieu there. Even though Tyrann Mathieu gets hurt a lot when he's on the field, you can't lie that he's a really good presence in that Arizona defense and the impact he makes. When you think of Harrison Smith in Minnesota, that dude is a very impact player for that defense.
Mm-hmm.
So,
God, yeah.
So there's not many safeties available in the league, so the Chiefs had to get this done because of that, and they needed someone to build around for years to come until, you know, Eric Berry does not be able to play at that high level anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, Anthony, we got a lot of quarterback news to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about all this quarterback news from yesterday when we get back to the Going to Me Concepts Football Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to Going to Me Concepts Football Podcast. And yesterday on this show, I talked about Kirk Cousins and his desire to play for the 49ers, and that's the only team that he would like to be traded to. Well, it looks like that the Redskins are asking for a lot for that to happen. And when I did the show yesterday, Kirk Cousins wasn't franchise tagged.
Right.
But now he got hit with the tag, I think around yesterday before noon, West Coast time. So Kirk Cousins took to Twitter and say, tag, I admit. So he has been placed on the exclusive franchise tag.
Mm-hmm.
On the Washington Redskins. So, you know, they have both of these sides have not been able to get a deal done.
Right.
You know, they can't, the Redskins can't tag Cousins next year because he will probably make up to like $40 million a year.
He's going to make so much money. Because the thing with the cap is what they do is basically you can only make so much money on the cap the first year, you know, your top five. But then if you keep doing it over and over and over again, they raise the cap, raise the money, because you can't just basically franchise a player 10 years in a row. And then it's like, okay, now you retire. That's not how that goes. You got to have at least some stability when you're playing in the NFL. You can't just every time go 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. Like, that's not how that goes when you're like a franchise player.
Yeah, and Cousins is expected to make $4 million
right
next year, and both sides haven't agreed on a long-term deal in the past 2 years. Maybe Washington doesn't see Kirk Cousins as a franchise quarterback, because if they did, they probably would have signed him already.
Yeah.
I don't think they believe in him like they say they do, and I think that's the reason why Kirk Cousins wants to play for another team, even though he wants to play for one team in particular. I think he feels like he's not wanted there. But I do think with the Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon slated to hit free agency, I do think this is the ultimate year where Kirk Cousins has to prove that he is the man, because he's not going to have the same weapons on offense. He's going to have Jordan Reed, but that's probably be it. He's going to have to prove it this year, and I do think with him not being he is going to be available via trade, but the Redskins are asking for a lot. They're asking for an RG3 type of deal from the 49ers, and I don't think the Niners should give up the number 2 pick. You want to know why? Because I do think Kirk Cousins will be a free agent this time next year, so I just think the Niners should just wait one more year just to sign him.
See, I'm a little bit different on that. See, the thing with me is, I think that, name me a time where a quarterback's been available that he wasn't injured, right? Because whether you want to talk about Peyton Manning, whether you want to talk about Brett Favre, whether you want to talk about Tony Romo, all of them at least were free agents in some way, shape, or form because of old age / injury, right? Brett Favre basically got to too many years where he basically decided, I'm just going to keep, saying maybe I retire, maybe I come back, and the Packers decided, bleep this, we're done. Romo has a bad back, so he's probably going to be a free agent, and Peyton Manning had a trick neck, mixed with the fact of you had Andrew Luck on the team. This is the only situation where there's no really good situation. There's no good reason why you want to make him available, right? He's just going to be available because he wants to get paid, and the Washington doesn't want to. That doesn't happen generally with a quarterback that almost threw for 5,000 yards last year. If that's the case, you re-sign Matthew Stafford, you re-sign Matt Ryan, you re-sign Jay Cutler, you re-sign whoever you want to talk about. Jay Cutler might be available, but he's not good anymore, right? He hasn't had the season that Kirk Cousins just had, so it's kind of surprising that he's available at all. Generally what teams do, even with Joe Flacco after he won a Super Bowl, they generally just kind of bite the bullet and it's just kind of just look, man, I don't want to sign you to all this money because it hurts out the salary cap, but whatever, we're going to sign you. So I'm just assuming that that's what's going to happen in Washington. And if they trade him, it's going to be for some really high value, like the second overall pick in the draft.
I don't think the Niners should trade a top 5 pick for a quarterback that's kind of like a borderline tier 2. And I know Kirk Cousins.
Well, no, that's the other thing, too. It's I don't know how good he actually is.
Exactly. That's the thing. I think there's a little bit of mystery there, and I do think, even though he passed for 5,000, or almost 5,000 yards yesterday, not yesterday, 5,000 yards last season, he did it with a lot of teams around, with a lot of players around him, and there's a lot of good players on the sidelines, with Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon. So I do think number 2 pick is too high of a value to give for a quarterback that had a career year in passing yards, but that's a borderline top tier 2 quarterback, a tier 2. He's not even in the Elite 8 or the elite quarterback.
Well, because you can go down the list and you can say, is he as good as Aaron Rodgers? No. Is he as good as Tom Brady?
No.
Is he as good as Aaron Rodgers? No.
You said Aaron Rodgers twice.
Because Aaron Rodgers is great.
Okay.
Is he as good as Drew Brees? No. Is he as good as Ben Roethlisberger? No. Is he as good as Derek Carr?
No, I don't know. That's the thing. Derek Carr, I think I'd rather have Derek Carr than Kirk Cousins.
Is he as good as Stafford?
That might no. I think I would have. Stafford.
I think he's at that level. I don't think he's as good as Matt.
He's kind of almost close to Stafford.
I don't think he's as good as Matt Ryan. I don't think there's I think he's Russell Wilson. I don't think he's as good as Russell Wilson. It's basically at that next level of we'll call it Stafford. As weird as it to say, Andy Dalton. He's at that kind of level. He throws some more yards than Andy Dalton, but I think he's at that 11 to 15 level. And if you're going to give all that money to him, that's fine because the quarterbacks, whether you're great or not, get paid in the NFL. Jay Cutler's going to get money, and we don't even know if he's a good quarterback or not. Cousins at least threw for almost 5,000 yards. That kind of necessitates you get paid. Forget the fact that the NFL throws for a lot of yards anyways. 5,000 yards is 5,000 yards. That's a lot of yards to throw for, and in a league where you need quarterbacks, he's going to get paid either by the Niners or by the Washington or by some team, right? That's how that's going to go.
Yeah, so he's going to get paid, whether it's this year or next year. Me personally, I think the 49ers should just wait till next offseason to sign Kirk Cousins because he obviously wants to play there.
Right.
He obviously wants to play under Kyle Shanahan. So I think the Niners should just hold on to the number 2 pick, get an impact player that can help your defense because I think that's the route they're going to go to help your defense next year and the years to come, continue to build the defense. And then you can sign Kirk Cousins next year. Maybe bring some offensive pieces this year to kind of help move that process faster. So that's the thing. That's the route I think the 49ers should go. I don't think they should give up the number 2 pick for a middle-tier quarterback. Well, he won't be the only – Kirk Cousins is not the only quarterback that possibly will not be available. That Jimmy Garoppolo also falls in that category. And the Patriots are not expected to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, according to Adam Schefter.
Lies.
So with Kirk Cousins being on the franchise tag and with Jimmy Garoppolo, allegedly not being available via trade, it kind of has a ripple effect on a lot of quarterback needy teams. So I think this might increase the value on Mike Glennon, AJ McCarron, even maybe Colin Kaepernick after opting out of his contract today with the 49ers. So, and even the quarterbacks in the draft. So this is going to impact a lot of quarterback needy teams and how they make the decisions on acquiring quarterbacks this offseason.
Right.
So I do think it's going to have a ripple effect.
I think he gets traded. And so here's the thing. The Patriots are basically coming out and say, like, oh, we're not trading him. Okay, that's nice. That's sweet. Especially coming from the Patriots. You're the ones who traded Jamie Collins midseason and Chandler Jones before the season started. I don't trust what you say. Now, I also think they're being serious at the same time. And what I mean by that is, so they say they're not trading him right now. Cool. Awesome. Fantastic. Now, the draft isn't till April or May? So
it's in late April, I believe, this year. Yeah.
Late April. Okay, so they still have a little bit of time to, and I'm not talking about the Patriots, I'm talking about the other teams in the NFL, right? The Bears, the Niners, the Browns, they all have basically, a little bit of time to figure out what they want to do, right? They have a time to evaluate all these players, see who they like, see who they hate, and basically go from there. Now, once the draft kind of gets up there and maybe the Browns, who have the number 1 and the number 112 overall pick, look at the draft and say, like, okay, I hate all of these quarterbacks. They all stink. I don't want any of them. All right, New England, that's fine. You want the 12th overall pick? Fine. Maybe then they make the trade then. Same thing with the Niners. If they look at everyone and say, like, we don't like any of these guys, we'd rather have a guy that actually did stuff in the NFL, then you could do that type of stuff, right? And also, the other situation that could come about is, let's call it the Teddy Bridgewater situation. The Vikings probably had no plans of trading for Sam Bradford before Bridgewater's knee went boom. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, we probably should now because we have this good defense and we think we have a chance of winning, so let's trade for him. That could happen to a team, around the NFL anywhere. Like, okay, what if suddenly Eli Manning blows out his knee? The Giants could basically say, like, okay, well, we want to keep Odell Beckham, da-da-da, and Eli's getting a little bit older. Maybe he can't come back from this. Let's trade for Garoppolo and have him be the new guy going forward. Like, there's situations out there where the quarterback gets hurt and they have a good team, and all of a sudden they want to trade for him. What if the Broncos go out and their defense is just killing, it's just amazing, but the quarterbacks are so bad for them if they don't get Romo, and the quarterbacks are so bad for them, they're just like, you know what, whatever. Like, if we get him, now we kind of solidified all this stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of situations that can still happen, is my point.
Okay. So you think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get traded. So you're saying Patriots are using this as leverage to get be blown away.
Right. I'm saying this is the thing of just like, oh, we don't want to trade it. Because if you say, like, we want to trade him, then all of a sudden teams are like, all right, well, we'll give you a 7th-round pick, right? They'll lowball him, right? But if, not that this is going to trick anybody, but this at least is a situation where they can basically just say, like, we don't want to trade him. And if something comes available to where a team's just like, okay, what if we give you a number 1 and a number 4 overall pick? Then they got to be like, oh, all right, Jimmy, you got to go.
Okay, so this is going to impact a lot of teams, like the Browns, the Bears, the 49ers, the Jets, with I think Jimmy Garoppolo not being available, I think it really does affect the 49ers. It does affect the Browns. I thought the Bears will be the team to get him. You know, I'm kind of agreeing with you on this. I do think that the Patriots are using this as leverage. And I think whoever decides to blow the Patriots away, remember, you have to make sure you can sign them and extend them because they're only a contract for 1 year. So you got to make sure you do that.
Right.
So this is going to cause a ripple effect. And, you know, like I said, maybe Adrian McCarron, maybe Mike Glennon. I think Colin Kaepernick might have a better chance of going back to the 49ers now because of all this hoopla with the quarterbacks.
I think you get a situation because there's two quarterbacks that basically like sway this whole thing. It's Romo and it's Garoppolo.
Yeah.
For different reasons. One, Romo's a proven starter that, you know, can, if he goes to Denver, can help them win a Super Bowl. And Garoppolo, it's just so unknown, right? It's the Matt Flynn situation. Only you hope it's a lot better than how it went for Matt Flynn.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how these quarterbacks and where they will land, you know, this offseason. So if they get traded, so Anthony thinks...
I think he's going to get traded at some point. I just think they don't have any need to trade him now.
What about Kirk Cousins? Do you think he'll get traded?
Do you
think the 49ers pull the trigger?
No, I think he stays with Washington just because Washington would be dumb. I don't even think Cousins is that good, but I think they'd be dumb to let him go.
Yeah, and I do think that if Washington does indeed let him go, I do think the Niners could possibly sign Kirk Cousins next offseason if he's still available. And if he's still available next offseason, I'm going to be... I don't know. The Redskins will be dumb to not extend him. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Okay, well, that's going to conclude our show, Anthony. We had a busy show today. We had a busy day. And we're going to have a semi-busy day tomorrow. You know, we had some news from today that we didn't get a chance to talk about. But we will be back tomorrow, and we will discuss any type of news that happens over the next 24 hours. And I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Anthony.
And this is the Going to Me Concepts Football Podcast, and you guys have a great day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.